Hey, my friend. Tonight, let's journey back to the harsh realities of life in America, where ordinary people battled the elements, disease, hunger, and the brutal silence of an unforgiving world. Let's uncover the vivid tapestry of that era and see what it truly meant to survive. Have you ever pictured yourself standing on a frigid dock where the wind off Massachusetts Bay slices through your skin like a blade? It's 1620, and you, Eliza, a 24-year-old woman from a tiny English village, tremble at Plymouth's harbor, staring at the ship Hope's anchor swaying before you. It's no gateway to dreams. It's a creaking wooden coffin ready to swallow you into the ocean's depths. You clutch your shawl, hands calloused from days weaving cloth back home, and wonder, is this where it all begins or where it ends? You're not chasing glory. You don't dream of gold or monuments. You just want to live, even one more day, to prove your sacrifice matters. But as you step onto the deck, your feet slip on the wet wood, and a chilling truth hits. This life won't welcome you. It will crush you, bit by bit, like waves grinding stone to dust. Below deck, the air is heavy, thick with salt, sweat, and fear. You squeeze among strangers, their faces pale, eyes sunken from hunger and doubt. Your space is barely enough to curl up, knees to chin, next to a man named Thomas, who coughs through the night and mutters about Virginia's cornfields he'll never see. You hug your canvas bag, your entire life, a knife, a Bible, and a moldy scrap of bread. The ship groans like a dying beast. Each wave slamming the hull reminds you, you don't belong here. The ceiling is so low you stoop, shoulders aching, and darkness cloaks you like a curse. The first night, you hear retching. The second, a child stops breathing. The mother's wail pierces the air, but no one dares comfort her. They fear weakness might spread. Rats are your first companions. They don't squeak or flee. They prowl, bold, their eyes glinting like tiny coals in the dark. One nibbles your tattered shoe, and you don't shoo it away. You're afraid of rousing those around you, of being seen as a troublemaker. Instead, you close your eyes, trying to recall the scent of hay back home, but all you smell is rotting wood and the breath of despair. Food is a cruel jest. You're handed a piece of salt pork hard as stone, a few dry beans rattling in a wooden bowl, and a mug of cloudy ale. No water. The barrel's water has turned brown, reeking like a stagnant pond. You sip the ale, ignoring the beetle floating in it. You chew the meat, jaws aching, wondering if you'll have teeth left when you reach shore. But you eat, because hunger is a fiercer enemy than death. Days pass, and you measure time by pain. A headache means morning. A backache means night. You're allowed on deck a few hours daily, where Atlantic winds slap your face like a warning. The sun blazes but offers no warmth. You breathe deeply, seeking fresh air, but a sailor barks, ordering you below. You obey. Here, obedience is the only way to survive. A storm arrives like an angry god. The ship pitches, hurling you against walls. Your stomach revolts, emptying what little remains. Around you, people scream, pray, cling to anything fixed. A wooden crate shatters, Rainwater floods in, soaking your clothes, cold as a blade. You wonder if death would come faster if you let go. But you don't. Not from courage, but because you've forgotten how to give up. Fever spreads. A woman named Mary, who once sang lullabies to her child, now shivers, her skin burning like embers. No doctor, only a sailor claiming some medical knowledge. He cuts her arm, pours vinegar on the wound, and prays. Mary dies the next morning. Her body, wrapped in cloth and tied to a stone, is cast into the sea. No one speaks. You watch the water claim her, and part of you sinks with her. Days blur into a litany of moans, hunger, and fear. You forget who you are. Eliza, who once dreamed of a small house in the New World, is now a specter. Pale, lips cracked, eyes hollow. You dream of home, but your village is a faded sketch. You dream of food, always out of reach. Each morning, you wake, wondering if today is your last. But one evening, as the sun sinks into the sea like a fiery coin, a strange sound rises. A song. Not a prayer, not a sob, but a hoarse, trembling melody from a man you've never spoken to. Others join, their voices frail but resolute. It's not joy. It's a farewell to who you were, to what you've lost. You sing along, and for the first time, you feel less alone. On the final day aboard, you stand on deck, watching Plymouth's shore emerge. Land. It's not beautiful. It's cold, gray, and silent, like a threat. You disembark, knees trembling, and kneel in the mud. Not to pray. You're too weak to stand. The ship turns, leaving you behind, and you realize this isn't victory. It's the start of a new battle, one you're not ready for, but must fight. Mud clings to your boots like a persistent whisper, dragging you down with each step across Plymouth's wild expanse. It's been 3 days since you, Eliza, left the Hope's anchor. But the Atlantic's chill still grips your bones, a specter that won't depart. The land, your long-dreamed-of haven, is no paradise. It's a brutal canvas painted with dark trees, wind hissing through leaves, and the heavy silence of a world indifferent to your existence. You stand in a barren clearing where a few crooked wooden huts rise like broken teeth. This is your new home, but it feels nothing like one. The roof leaks, the dirt floor reeks of rotting leaves, and gaps in the walls let in the gray dawn's light. You grip an axe, palms bleeding from fresh blisters, and hear the bellows of a man named Samuel, who calls himself leader because his voice booms louder than others. "Chop trees, build homes, winter waits for no one," he roars, and you obey, not out of respect, but because you know to stop is to die. Work begins at once, with no time to breathe. You've never held an axe before, but now it's part of you, heavy and brutal. Each swing into an oak is a battle, vibrations jolting your arms, searing your shoulders. These trees aren't like England's. They're tough, unyielding, their roots deep, as if daring you to try. A shard of bark flies, grazing your face with a stinging cut. You wipe the blood with the back of your hand and keep going, because Samuel's watching, his gaze sharp as a blade. The earth resists. It's strewn with rocks, roots, and thorns that tear your skin through your thin linen dress. You try digging a hole for a post, but each shovelful reminds you, this land doesn't want you. Winter's coming, Samuel repeats, and you feel it in the damp cold seeping through your coat. Your breath turns to mist, vanishing before your eyes, like the dreams you carried across the sea. You glance at the others, John, the blacksmith with scarred hands, Abigail, the gaunt woman clutching her silent child, and wonder if they, too, feel this world strangling them. Night falls, and you huddle in the hut, on a thin blanket spread over dirt. A small fire crackles, but it gives more smoke than warmth, clinging to your hair, your lungs. You hear coughing from the hut's corner, Abigail's muttered prayers, and the wind shrieking through the wooden slats like a dirge. Sleep isn't rest. It's a struggle against cold forest noises and the fear you won't wake come morning. Rats, hardier survivors than you, skitter over your legs, seeking the breadcrumb hidden in your bag. You don't shoo them. You're too exhausted. Food is a distant luxury. You eat ship's leftovers, salt meat tough as rope, a handful of cornmeal mixed with water into bland gruel. An iron pot simmers all day, but holds only water and a few wild turnips John unearthed. You chew slowly, not to savor, but to trick your stomach into feeling full. Hunger is a beast in your gut, snarling, clawing, never sleeping. You eye the settlement's lone chicken, careful not to betray your craving. Eggs are worth more than gold, but you can't stop imagining the smell of roasted meat. The forest surrounds you like a living creature, watching, waiting. It's not loud like the woods back home. No birds sing, only leaves rustle and branches snap in the dark. You hear movement, but don't dare look. It's not beasts you fear, but this place's mystery. One night, an owl perches on a branch, its yellow eyes glinting, and your heart pounds. Abigail whispers, it's a bad omen. You don't believe her, but you pray before sleeping. Farming is a bitter jest. You sow the corn seeds Samuel hands out, but the rocky soil swallows them like a refusal. A few frail sprouts emerge, only to wither under Plymouth's sea winds. John calls it a bad season. Abigail blames the land. You stare at your hands, cut and caked with mud, wondering if you've done something wrong. Insects are the new enemy. Mosquitoes swarm, leaving itching welts. Ticks latch onto your skin, tiny but deadly. You pry one from your neck, watching it writhe, and wonder if you're carrying death. Hygiene is a foreign concept. There's no bathhouse, just a forest corner half a mile from the huts. You go alone, gripping a stick, praying you meet neither beast nor stranger. Rain falls endlessly, turning everything to mud. Your shoes are soaked, socks tattered, and your body's odor blends with the earth's. You stop washing your face. Your nails are black. A rash blooms on your arm, and you try not to think about it. Smiles have abandoned you. No one smiles here. Your voice shrinks, reduced to curt replies when Samuel questions you. The land isn't your enemy, but it's no friend. It's indifferent, cold, like an ancient god unmoved by your pleas. You need it to grow, to build, to live, but it doesn't need you. Each day, that truth cuts deeper, like an unhealed wound. One afternoon, as you drag a log, Samuel yells that you're too slow. You want to protest, to say you're tired, hungry, human. But you stay silent. Silence is your only armor. Then, a small moment breaks through. Abigail, usually silent, hands you a tiny piece of cornbread, baked in a makeshift clay oven. "Eat," she whispers, eyes downcast. You take it, hands trembling, and bite. It's dry, bland, but in that moment, it's everything. You look at Abigail, wanting to thank her, but she's turned away, holding her child tighter. You swallow, and a faint spark, not hope, but resilience, flares in your chest. You stand, grip the axe, and carry on. Because in Plymouth, living isn't triumph. It's refusing to surrender, even for one more day. The fire in the clay hearth sputters weakly, casting a sickly yellow glow on your gaunt hands as you stir a pot of cornmeal gruel in the Plymouth hut. You, Eliza, have been here 2 months, but time isn't measured in days or weeks anymore. It's the dwindling spoonfuls of cornmeal left in the sack, the cracks splitting your lips, and the gnawing hunger in your belly snarling like a wolf. The gruel before you is so thin you can see the pot's bottom, just water with a few floating grains, barely enough to sustain anyone. You lift the wooden spoon, hands trembling from exhaustion, and portion out the meal to those in the hut. Abigail and her silent child, John with his scarred hands, and Samuel, who clings to his air of authority despite eyes sunken like pits. No one speaks. You scoop a meager share for yourself, avoiding the child's ravenous gaze. Hunger isn't just a feeling. It's a force, a cruel god ruling Plymouth, forcing you to weigh every bite, every choice, as if life is a math problem that never balances. Food, or what passes for it, is an obsession. The stores from the Hope's anchor are gone. Salt meat is a memory, leaving only its briny ghost on your tongue, mocking you. Flour is green with mold, dry beans are nibbled by rats, and the butter barrel has cracked, revealing a sour, rancid sludge. You scrape off the mold, boil the remaining beans, and pray your stomach can endure. But every bite is a gamble. A moldy crust might twist your guts in agony. A sip from the nearby stream could make you retch violently. Breakfast isn't a ritual. You eat when there's something to eat, usually a handful of cornmeal mixed with water, boiled into a thick, tasteless mush that's as bland as dirt. You chew slowly, not to savor, but to prolong the illusion of fullness. Real bread, the golden, fragrant loaves you knew in England, is a lavish dream. Here, the rocky soil and sea winds scorn wheat. Planted seeds rarely sprout, and when they do, they wither before maturing. You once tried baking what passed for bread from cornmeal and ground bark, but it was tough as leather, tearing your gums until they bled. Sometimes you dig up wild turnips, tiny and hard as stones, and boil them in the pot. Sometimes you chew nettles, their sting burning your tongue but at least filling your stomach. Once, John brought back a squirrel, and the group shared its meager flesh, gnawing bones to waste nothing. You try not to dwell on the whispered tales in the dark, about Jamestown settlers boiling shoes to eat, their eyes no longer human. You laugh, but it's a dry, hollow sound, and you check your shoes, wondering how they'd taste. Cooking is a survival rite. You stand by the fire, smoke stinging your eyes, stirring the pot with a self-carved wooden spoon, cracked down its length. There are no recipes, no measurements, only instinct and the faint hope that the pot's contents won't burn. You add a few wild onion stalks, a pinch of salt, and call it stew. On a lucky day, Samuel shoots a bird, and the smell of roasting meat silences the hut, as if everyone's praying through their breath. But the moment is fleeting. The next day, the pot holds only water and turnips. Hunger changes you. It clouds your eyes, turning the world into a gray blur. It slows your steps, each movement like dragging a boulder. You see Abigail's child, so thin his ribs jut out, and a crack splinters your heart. You want to give him your share, but then you recall your own weakness yesterday, collapsing while hauling wood. You grip the spoon tighter, swallow shame, and eat. Because here, shame doesn't feed you, only food does. Plymouth's forest offers little aid. It guards its secrets fiercely, sharing nothing. You forage for roots, gather leaves, but each step is a risk. The wrong plant could leave you convulsing all night. An unfamiliar root might be medicine or poison. You learn by watching, by failing, sometimes by death. Last week, a man named William ate red berries and never woke. No one spoke while digging his grave. You just memorized those berries' shape, searing them into your mind like a blood-soaked lesson. Dividing food is a brutal ceremony. Every grain of corn is counted. Every bread scrap is measured by wary eyes. You see Samuel take a larger share but don't dare protest. You see Abigail hide a crust for her child and pretend not to notice. Once, John was caught sneaking an extra spoonful of gruel. Samuel tied him outside in the rain, and no one intervened. You bow your head, stir the pot, and try to block out John's moans. In Plymouth, justice isn't fairness. It's order, and order always wins. But one evening, as moonlight slips through a crack in the roof, a miracle unfolds. Abigail finds a patch of non-poisonous blackberries and brings back a small handful. You divide them, one per person, as if they're treasures. When you bite, sweetness explodes on your tongue, and for a moment you remember who you were. Eliza, who laughed under the sun, who dreamed of a warm home. Everyone eats in silence, but their eyes gleam brighter, like tiny fires in the dark. You look around, and for the first time, you see not just hungry faces, but people, fighting hunger and death together. The moment doesn't last. Morning brings an empty pot, and hunger returns, fiercer than before. But you rise, Grasp the wooden spoon and stir, though it's only water. Because in Plymouth, you've learned that living isn't about a full stomach. It's about persisting, despite your stomach's screams, despite your heart's cracks. You stir, you share, you eat, and you pray. Not for miracles, but for the strength to face tomorrow, a day you know won't be easier than today. Frost clings to your eyelids, Eliza, as you wake in the Plymouth hut, your breath forming fragile white clouds before you. Winter has arrived, without knocking, without warning, silently draping a white veil of ice over everything, soil, trees, and the frail hope you once clutched. 3 months have passed since you stepped onto land, but now each day is a battle against the cold, an invisible enemy that spares neither prayers nor effort. Your hut, built from rough oak planks, is a flimsy fortress. Wind slices through the gaps, sharp as a blade, cutting your skin through your thin linen dress. You huddle by the fire, but its feeble flame warms only one hand, leaving the rest of you trembling. Your blanket, a tattered scrap reeking of smoke and earth, fails to block the cold seeping into your bones. Your toes are numb, and you pretend it's a good sign, though deep down you know it isn't. Firewood is winter's lifeblood. You count each log like days of survival. The stockpile dwindles faster than you feared, and every morning you trudge into the forest, boots sinking in snow, to chop more. The oaks are iron hard, each axe swing jarring your spine with pain. Thick snow hides paths, and you often return with just a few dry twigs, hands bleeding, heart heavy. Once, you stole a plank from the fence, hoping Samuel wouldn't notice. But his eyes are hawk-sharp, and you know, here, stealing wood is a grave sin. Food is a distant dream. The cornmeal gruel, once a survival right, is now watery slush with scraps of bark. You scrape grease from the pan, smear it on a dry cornbread crust, and chew slowly to fool your stomach. Sometimes you boil bones from a bird eaten long ago, hoping for a trace of flavor. Hunger no longer growls. It's silent, patient, like a predator certain time is on its side. You look at Abigail's child, eyes sunken, and wonder if he remembers the taste of meat. The cold slows everything. Laughter died long ago. Abigail's prayers are now hoarse whispers, and even Samuel, once bellowing commands, speaks less, his voice low like ash. You don't converse, only exchange necessities. Add wood. Stir the pot. Watch the fire. Words are heavy, as if frozen too. You see John, the blacksmith, now thin as kindling, and wonder if he'll survive this winter. Illness returns, quiet but merciless. A persistent cough echoes from the hut's corner, and you know it's Abigail. She tries to hide it, but the deep, dry hacks betray her. There's no medicine, only pine needle tea you boil, bitter and useless. Samuel tells her to stay near the fire, but it's too weak, and the cold is relentless. One night, Abigail's child stops breathing. No one notices until morning. You help dig the grave, but the frozen ground is hard as stone. You use a shovel, your hands, nails breaking, and manage only a shallow pit covered with rocks. No one weeps. Tears freeze too. Sleep is a gamble. You lie down, curled in your blanket, unsure if you'll wake. You dream of summer, of warm sunlight on fields, but dreams turn to snow, darkness, wailing wind. You wake, lips cracked, hands bleeding, the fire dead. You blow on embers, hands shaking, praying for a spark. If not, the cold wins. One morning, your hair is frozen to the wall, iced overnight. You pull free, wincing, and carry on. Because stopping is defeat. Animals are wiser than you. Deer have fled deep into the forest. Birds flew south. Only crows remain, perched on branches, black eyes glinting like death's messengers. You watch them, wondering if they're counting your days. Water is a paradox. Snow is everywhere, but useless until melted. You boil it in the pot, burning precious wood for a cup of murky, icy water that makes your teeth ache. You drink, because not drinking is death. Tension in the hut grows heavy. Samuel snaps, yelling when you spill a cup of water. John stays silent, but his fists clench when Samuel turns away. One night, Abigail coughs blood, and everyone avoids each other's eyes. You wrap your scarf tighter, clutching your small knife, not for beasts, but against despair. You hear rumors of a man from a Cape Cod settlement who wandered into the snow and didn't return. His coat was found, frozen, miles away. No one speaks his name anymore. Children are no longer children. Abigail's surviving child sits still, eyes wide, staring at the fire. You try telling stories, singing a folk tune, but your voice is hoarse, your hands shake. The child asks, "Is spring real?" You don't answer. You don't know. Frost blooms inside the hut's walls like strange ice flowers. Your breath forms clouds, and you wonder if it's your soul slipping away. But one morning, as faint light seeps through a gap, you hear an unfamiliar sound. Not wind, not coughing, but dripping water. The roof leaks, not from rain. The snow is melting. You step outside, boots sinking in mud, and see a tiny green sprout pushing through the soil. It's fragile, easily crushed, but it's there. You kneel, not to pray, but to look. And for the first time in months, you cry. Not from joy, but because you realize you've survived. Not by miracles, but by stubbornness. By days you refused to let go. Winter tried to erase you, but you're still here. Tattered, starving, but alive. And that's the only victory Plymouth allows. You drag a heavy log through Plymouth's muddy quagmire, your shoulders screaming as if torn apart, sweat soaking through your shirt despite the biting cold. Spring has come, bringing mud and rain, but no relief. You, Eliza, survived the winter, but at a cost. Your body is gaunt, ravaged, with fresh scars on your hands and eyes aged beyond your years. Work doesn't pause to applaud you. Here, it's your breath, your blood, the sole reason you still stand. Each day begins before dawn. You wake, bones creaking, back stiff as rotten wood. No coffee, no moment to rest. You coax a fire from dying embers, hands trembling as you blow on coals, and prepare the bland cornmeal gruel the group knows too well. Samuel, his gaze icy, barks orders. Plow the fields, build fences, planting season waits for no one. You nod, not in agreement, but because arguing is a luxury you can't afford. Work is an endless symphony. You plow, boots sinking deep, the rocky soil scraping your hands through tattered gloves. Jagged stones and stubborn roots mock your efforts, as if Plymouth's earth scorns you. Your wooden plow, ancient and heavy, groans against stone. No horses, no oxen. Your shoulders are the beast, your spine the plow. Each step is a silent curse, but you don't stop. To stop is to court a failed harvest, to invite hunger's return. You chop trees, build fences, haul logs. Your axe is dull, its handle cracked, but there's no repairman. You bind it with hemp, swing again, each blow jarring like a punch. Fences collapse in rain, and you rebuild, hands blistered, nails broken. You fetch water from the stream, the wooden bucket leaking, soaking your dress. The path is long, mud clings, and when you return, Samuel glances without a word of thanks. Work doesn't need gratitude. It needs you to do it. Abigail, weakened by winter, labors beside you. She kneads dough, spins wool, stirs the pot, though her hands tremble and her eyes blur from hunger. She carries her surviving child on her hip, teaching the 4-year-old to pick rocks from the field. Children here aren't children. They're small hands, silent workers. Once, the child spills a bucket of water, and Samuel bellows. Abigail bows her head, clutching her child tighter, and you catch a spark of anger in her eyes. But she stays silent. You both know. Anger is a flame you can't afford to light. John, the blacksmith, toils at a makeshift forge where black smoke rises like trapped souls. He hammers iron, sweat mingling with soot, hands scalded by embers. Once, he breaks a nail, and Samuel threatens to cut his ration. John says nothing, only pounds the hammer harder, the clang of metal his sole rebellion. You watch him, wondering if he ever dreams of another life, or if, like you, he's forgotten how to dream. Women's work, yours, is a double burden. You do all the men do, haul logs, dig earth, and more. You sew, mending the group's tattered clothes, the blunt needle pricking your fingers. You wash in the icy stream, hands chapping, blood seeping as you scrub cloth. You cook, stirring the pot over fire, smoke stinging your eyes. You tend Abigail when she coughs, brewing pine tea, knowing it's futile. And you do it all with a child clinging to your skirt, under Samuel's watchful gaze, fearing a single mistake could bring punishment. There are no days off. Sunday is a hollow promise. You walk 2 miles to church, a larger hut, freezing and swarming with flies. You sit on a hard wooden bench, listening to the preacher rail about sin and God's wrath. Your torn shoes rub your heels raw, blood seeping, but you don't flinch. Afterward, you trudge back, cook supper, mend clothes, prepare for tomorrow. Church isn't rest. It's another task, with God and Samuel as your audience. Tools are silent enemies. Axes break, shovels bend, ropes rot. You mend them with hemp, stones, sheer will. Once, the plow blade snaps, and you dig with your hands, nails tearing. You don't complain. Complaining is for those with time, and you have none. You just work, though your muscles scream, your knees buckle. One night, you lie on the dirt floor, feeling every stone beneath your back, and dream of rest. But even in dreams, you haul logs, stir pots, dig earth. Spring brings new tasks. You sow seeds, pull weeds, pray for rain, then curse when floods come. You build a coop for the lone chicken, though it may die before summer. You patch the roof, climbing high, sea winds slapping your face. Each task ties you to this land, but also reminds you one mistake, a failed crop, a sickness, could erase everything. You live on the edge, where a bad day could be your last. But one afternoon, as you yank weeds in the garden, Abigail approaches, offering a scrap of wool she's woven. "For your scarf," she says, her voice soft but warm. You take it, feeling its rare softness, and meet her eyes. There's no smile, but an understanding that you're both fighting, not just against soil and hunger, but despair itself. You wrap the wool around your neck, and for a moment, work isn't a burden. It's a thread binding you to Abigail, to John, to yourself. You stand, grip the shovel, and keep digging. Because in Plymouth, work isn't living. It's how you refuse to die, one shovelful, one drop of sweat, one day at a time. A cut on your finger, Eliza, oozes crimson blood, dripping onto the dirt floor of the Plymouth hut, where the stench of smoke and sickness melds like a curse. You were slicing a wild turnip, and the dull knife slipped, but the sting doesn't halt you. 6 months have passed since you set foot on this land, and now sickness, not hunger or cold, is the new predator, slithering silently through the settlement's crevices, choosing victims without warning. This small cut, you know, could be the doorway to death. Sickness in Plymouth doesn't ask permission. It arrives like an uninvited guest, knocking with dry coughs, fevers that scorch, or swollen angry welts. You bind your finger with a ragged cloth scrap, praying the wound won't fester. There's no doctor, no medicine, only folk remedies and Abigail's whispers, who knows a little about herbs, but not enough to save anyone. You look at her, now gaunt as a specter, coughing into her kerchief, and feel a chill unrelated to the sea wind. Each breath is a risk. Water from the stream, even boiled, carries invisible threats. Food, however scarce, might hide poison. A spoiled piece of salt meat, a sip of sour milk, or the wrong berry could leave you writhing all night. Last week, a man named Thomas, who once helped you build a fence, died from eating strange mushrooms. He convulsed, eyes rolling white, and no one dared approach. You dug his grave, mud clinging to the shovel, and said nothing as you piled stones over the pit. Here, death isn't tragedy, it's routine. Your body is a fragile fortress. Prolonged hunger weakens you, fractured sleep blurs your eyes. Your bones ache, as if cracking from within. Your immune system, if it still exists, is a flickering flame, easily snuffed out. When sickness comes, it doesn't knock softly, it pounds. Abigail, who once shared berries with you, now lies curled in the hut's corner, skin burning, lips cracked. You brew sage, crush roots, but the tea you offer only makes her cough harder. There's no cure, only waiting. Treatments are a blend of hope and desperation. Samuel, with cold confidence, advises bloodletting to release bad blood. You want to argue, but stay silent. Once, he tried it on John, feverish after breaking his arm. Blood flowed bright red, but John only grew weaker, eyes sinking deeper. He survived, not because of Samuel. You suspect it was his stubbornness, not a miracle. Abigail isn't bled. She's too frail. And Samuel shakes his head, as if her fate is sealed. Toothache is its own nightmare. You feel it first, a throb in your jaw, then swelling, then pain so fierce you can't speak. No dentist, only John, with rusty pliers and a jug of barley whiskey. You bite a leather strip, tears streaming, as he yanks the tooth. The crunch echoes in your skull. The pain lingers for days, the wound festers, but you live. You chew on the other side, praying to keep the rest of your teeth. Hygiene is a distant dream. You don't bathe. Cold water makes your bones ache, and warm water costs precious firewood. Your skin is caked with mud, sweat, and smoke, hardening like armor. Your nails are black, hair matted, and a red rash spreads across your neck. You try not to scratch, but the itch is a constant reminder. Your body isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the land, to sickness, to relentless days. Once, you tried washing your face in the stream, but the cold split your lips, blood trickling down your chin. Illness worsens in the hut. Abigail now coughs blood, and Samuel orders her isolated in a far corner. You bring her water, though it could kill you. Her child, now in your care, stares at her mother with empty eyes. You sing lullabies, voice hoarse, knowing the child doesn't hear. One night, Abigail grips your hand, whispering, "Watch over her." You nod, not promising, because promises are burdens you dare not carry. The next morning, she doesn't wake. You wrap her body in a blanket, drag it outside, and dig a grave in the rain. Mud clings to your hands, as if trying to hold her back. Death no longer makes you cry. You've learned to see it like rain, unavoidable, endured. But sickness doesn't stop. John starts coughing, and Samuel mutters, "It's God's will." You want to scream that God has nothing to do with it, that this land, this water, this hunger is the culprit. But you stay silent, stir the pot, brew more herbal tea. You don't believe it will save anyone, but doing something is better than watching. Sometimes someone survives, and they call it a miracle. A child outlasts a fever, A wound closes. Samuel kneels, thanking God. You don't kneel. You know it's not mercy. It's luck, cruel and random. You scan the faces in the hut, John, Abigail's child, Samuel, and wonder who's next. You check your finger. The cut is now swollen red, and you pray it doesn't spread. But deep down, you know, sickness doesn't choose the strong or weak. It just chooses. One evening, as the rain stops and moonlight seeps through the roof, you sit by the fire, cradling Abigail's child. She sleeps, her breath faint, and you feel her weight in your arms. You don't promise to save her, but you hold tighter, as if you could shield her from sickness's grasp. You stare at the fire, small but defiant, and realize you're still here, despite disease, despite death. Not because you're strong, because you refuse to stop. You rise, lay the child down, and boil water. Because in Plymouth, fighting sickness isn't about healing. It's about continuing, though your body cracks, though your heart shatters. Fear drapes over you like a heavy blanket, Eliza, as you stand in the shadows of the Plymouth hut, listening to Samuel's heavy footsteps outside the door. 7 months have passed since you arrived, and now power, not hunger, cold, or sickness, is the new specter, watching your every word, every glance. Here, laws aren't written on paper. They're carved into flesh, into the scars of silence, and you've learned to tread lightly, as if the dirt floor might collapse beneath a single misstep. Samuel isn't just a leader. He's the law, the judge, the invisible whip lashing anyone who dares question. With his silver beard and thunderous voice, he looms above all, not through strength, but because others have learned to bow. You see it daily, when he divides food, keeping a larger share, when he orders more fences built, though your hands bleed, when he reads scripture on Sundays, his piercing gaze sweeping the crowd, hunting for sin. Plymouth's laws are hidden blades. You learn them not through explanation, but punishment. A man named Caleb, who complained about a meager gruel portion, was tied to a post in the rain, shirt torn, skin purpled. "Stealing is a sin," Samuel declared, though Caleb only begged for a spoonful more. You stood in the crowd, head lowered, hearing his moans, your stomach twisting. The next week, Caleb vanished. No one asked where he went. You only saw his old shoes by the stream, a silent warning. Justice here isn't blind. It has eyes, and they stare right at you. Stealing a bread scrap could cost a finger. Lying to Samuel could earn a lashing, blood seeping into the mud. Once, a woman named Ruth, who whispered that Samuel hoarded firewood, was forced to stand in the square, a sign reading "Liar" hung around her neck. The crowd threw mud, stones, and you turned away, not daring to look. You knew. Today it was Ruth. Tomorrow it could be you. Religion is the sharpest blade. The church, a larger hut, frigid and reeking of smoke, is where laws are honed. On Sundays, you walk 2 miles, your tattered shoes rubbing your heels raw, to hear Ezekiel, a gaunt preacher, scream of hellfire. "God sees all," he bellows, and his gaze cuts through you, as if he knows you once thought of hiding a corn kernel. You sit rigid, sing hymns, though your voice is hoarse. Absence is a sin. A bored expression is a sin. A wayward thought, even unspoken, is a sin. You learn to be small. You speak little, nod often, keep your eyes down. When Samuel asks if the fence is finished, you say, "Yes, sir," though your hands still bleed. When Ezekiel asks if you pray nightly, you nod, though you stopped praying after Abigail died. You don't dare tell the truth. Truth invites punishment, and punishment here isn't just pain. It's humiliation, a scar that doesn't heal, your name whispered in the dark. Abigail's child, now trailing you like a shadow, learns the laws early. She doesn't cry when she spills water, doesn't play when Samuel's near. Once, she dropped a log, and Samuel raised his hand as if to strike. You pulled her behind you, meeting his eyes, and said, "I'll make up for it." He lowered his hand, but his gaze promised, "You'll pay." That night, you held the child, whispering she must be careful, though you knew she already understood. In Plymouth, children aren't children. They're survivors, small and silent. Rumors are the deadliest weapon. A whisper can ruin you. "Eliza works too slowly," someone says, and Samuel cuts your gruel. "Eliza looked at John too long," another whispers, and Ezekiel summons you before the church, questioning your virtue. You deny it, voice trembling, and he lets you go. But the crowd's eyes cling like mosquitoes. You learn not to look at anyone too long, not to speak too much, not to stand too close to John, though he's the only one who still treats you like a person. Punishment is public, a lesson for all. A man was hanged for stealing corn from the communal store. The crowd gathered, children forced to watch, and you stood at the edge, trying not to see the rope tighten. Samuel read scripture, voice calm, as if it were routine. Your stomach churned, but you didn't leave. Leaving was doubt, and doubt was sin. You stood, hearing the wind, wondering if the man's soul reached heaven or was trapped in Plymouth, like all of you. One morning, as you mend clothes under faint sunlight, John approaches, handing you a small iron piece forged into a cross. "For you," he says, voice low, eyes downcast. You take it, feeling its weight, and realize it's more than a gift. It's a quiet defiance, a way of saying you're both still human, despite laws that try to crush it. You hide the cross in your dress, heart pounding, and watch John walk away, his shoulders bowed by work but unbroken. You clutch the iron, and in that moment, a small flame ignites. Not rebellion, but resilience. You stand, resume sewing, but this time you don't bow your head. Because in Plymouth, living isn't about obeying. It's about holding on to yourself, even for a moment, even with a tiny piece of iron. Cornmeal clings beneath your fingernails, Eliza, as you knead dough on a flat stone in the Plymouth hut, the fire's smoke stinging your eyes. 8 months have passed since you arrived, and being a woman here isn't just surviving, It's carrying the world on your shoulders, from the morning's gruel to the shattered dreams of an entire community. You, a 24-year-old woman, fight not only hunger, sickness, and harsh laws, but the invisible weight of expectations, pressing you to be strong, silent, and never falter. Your day begins in darkness before the sun rises. You wake first, kindle the fire, haul water from the stream, and prepare cornmeal gruel, bland but vital to keep everyone alive. Your hands, calloused and cracked, stir the pot with mechanical rhythm, while Abigail's child, now calling you mother, though you didn't birth her, clings to your skirt. You teach her to hold a spoon, gather kindling, and avoid Samuel's gaze, who watches you like a hawk. Your work has no boundaries. You do men's tasks, chopping trees, plowing fields, dragging logs, and more. You wash clothes in the icy stream, hands red and raw, skin splitting like dry bark. You sew, mending John's, Samuel's, your own tattered shirts, the dull needle pricking your fingers, blood seeping into the fabric. You cook, standing by the fire, lungs burning from smoke, trying to turn wild turnips and water into something resembling a meal. And you do it all with a silent smile, because complaining is a luxury Plymouth women can't afford. Raising the child is an unnamed task. You carry her on your hip while weeding the garden, sing lullabies while stirring the pot, though your voice is hoarse. You teach her to steer clear of the fire, of Samuel, of strange plants that might be poison. When she cries, you hush her, not out of love, though you love her, but because crying might anger Samuel. Once, she broke a wooden bowl, and you shielded her, telling Samuel you did it. He cut your gruel portion, but you didn't regret it. The child looks at you, eyes wide, and you know she understands. You're her shield. Hygiene is a losing battle. You sweep the dirt floor, though dust rises and settles again. You wash rags in cold water, hands trembling, and hang them in the rain, praying they dry before rotting. Your hair is matted, tied with hemp cord, and your skin is thickened, caked with mud and soot. You have no mirror, only your reflection in a water bucket, a stranger's face, cheeks hollow, eyes sunken. You've forgotten you were once young, once dreamed of a warm home. Now you're Eliza, the pot stirrer, the seamstress, the one keeping everything from collapsing. Marriage, if you think of it, is a cold transaction. No flowers, no rings, just a handshake and a prayer. You're unwed, but the pressure looms. Samuel once hinted you should settle with a man in the settlement, as if your body belongs to the community. You glance at John, the blacksmith with scarred hands, and wonder if he's ever thought of you that way. But you don't ask. Love is a risk, and women here can't afford to take it. Pregnancy is a deadly gamble. You saw it with Mary, a newcomer who gave birth in the next hut. No doctor, just you and an old woman with some midwifery knowledge. Mary screamed through the night, blood soaking the straw, and you held her hand, praying. The baby lived, but Mary didn't. You wrapped her body in a blanket, dug her grave, and carried on. The child's now raised by another, but you know it may not survive the winter. You wonder if you'd dare bear a child, or if it would be a death sentence for both. Your virtue is a fragile tightrope. Smile at John, and whispers call you a flirt. Reject a man's glance, and you're labeled proud. Know too much, how to brew herbal tea or dress a wound, and you're suspect. Once, Ezekiel, the preacher, summoned you before the church, asking if you'd consorted with the devil for gathering sage in the woods. You denied it, voice shaking, and he let you go, but the crowd's eyes stabbed like knives. You learned to bow your head, speak softly, and hide a small knife in your sleeve, not for defense, but to feel you still control something. You age swiftly. Your skin wrinkles under the sea sun, your hands harden, your hair grays, though you're not yet 25. You bear scars from the fire, from thorns, from ceaseless days. But you don't complain. Complaining is for those with hope, and you left that on the hope's anchor. You just work, though your body cracks, though your heart weighs heavy. You stir the pot, mend clothes, hug the child, and keep the community from unraveling. And then, one evening, while you're washing rags by the stream, Abigail's child runs up, clutching a tiny wildflower, pale purple. "For Mama," she says, voice clear, and places it in your hand. You look at the flower, fragile yet vibrant, and feel a crack in your chest, not pain, but a spark of light. You hug the child, tears falling, not from sorrow, but because you realize, despite being crushed, overlooked, you're still part of something alive. You tuck the flower into your sleeve hair, stand, and resume washing. Because in Plymouth, being a woman isn't just surviving. It's keeping others' flames alive, even if you must set yourself ablaze. Beneath the oak canopy, where sunlight pierces like silver needles, you, Eliza, freeze, clutching a water bucket as leaves rustle, not from wind. 9 months have passed since you arrived in Plymouth, and now, for the first time, you sense the Wampanoag, the true people of this land, known only through Samuel and Ezekiel's fearful, suspicious whispers. The forest, once a place of firewood and dread, unveils a new secret. You're not alone, and this land isn't yours, despite the blood you've shed to claim it. You stand still, heart pounding, the bucket heavy in your hands. A figure emerges, not from shadow, but from light. A tall Wampanoag man, clad in deerskin, his gaze sharp, yet not hostile. You want to run, but your feet root to the ground. He doesn't speak, only raises a hand, palm open, placing a handful of corn on the earth before stepping back. You stare at the golden kernels, gleaming like sunlight, and realize this isn't a trap. It's an offer or a warning. The Wampanoag aren't the specters of Samuel's tales, branded savages to be tamed. They're living people with paths, villages, and memories deeper than the hope's anchor. Ezekiel calls them heathens, but as you pick up the corn, hands trembling, you wonder, who's the heathen here? You, with tattered boots and dreams of conquest, or they, who know how to grow corn, hunt deer, and live in harmony with the forest? This first encounter is a tense dance. You bring the corn to Samuel, hoping he'll see it as opportunity. but he eyes it like venomous snakes, his voice cold. What do they want? Land? Blood? You stay silent, but inside, you know they want nothing. They're watching, judging the strangers invading their world. The next day, you spot another Wampanoag, a woman, near the stream. She gestures, showing you how to plant corn with fish as fertilizer. You follow, hands caked in mud, and the first corn sprouts, vibrant green. But when you tell Samuel, he calls it God's miracle, not their wisdom. You begin to see your mistake. You came thinking this land was empty, yours to claim. But it has names, stories, hidden trails you never noticed. The Wampanoag live in longhouses, weave baskets from grass, and know when rivers teem with fish. They need neither your Bible nor your fences. They don't kneel to Ezekiel or bow to Samuel. And that terrifies you, not because of them, but because you realize you're the outsider, not they. Communication is a labyrinth. You gesture, point, speak loudly, but your words fall into void. They're patient, sometimes smiling, but their smiles aren't like John's or the child's. They're deeper, as if they know what you don't yet grasp. Once, you bring a small knife, hoping to trade for food. The Wampanoag man takes it, nods, and hands you a deerskin. You feel relief, but also unease. It's not friendship. It's balance, fragile as morning mist. Samuel calls these exchanges victories, as if the Wampanoag are submitting. But you see otherwise. They don't bow. They trade for iron knives to avoid conflict. You hear their speech, low and flowing like a stream, unhurried unlike Ezekiel's. They hold councils, decide together, unlike Samuel's lone commands. You want to learn, but when you ask, Samuel snaps, "Don't trust them." You nod, but inwardly, you hold on to what you've seen. A people who don't need you, yet still offer corn. Tension grows. Samuel wants more land, pushing fences deeper into the forest. Once, he shot a deer near a Wampanoag village, and they left a bundle of arrows before his hut. Not a threat, but a reminder. This land isn't yours. Samuel calls it war, but you see it as a boundary. You want to tell him peace is better, that corn and fish outweigh blood, but you stay silent. A woman's words carry no weight in Plymouth. John, the blacksmith, understands you. One night, by the fire, he whispers, "They know this land better. If war comes, we lose." You nod, clutching the iron cross he gave you, feeling an unspoken bond, not love, but shared understanding. Abigail's child, sleeping beside you, mumbles in her dreams, and you wonder if she'll live to see peace or only know blood and fire. One early morning, as fog blankets Plymouth, you go to the stream and find a small object on the bank, a grass basket holding a few corn kernels and a feather. No one's there, but you know it's from them. You take the basket, heart racing, and realize, this isn't a gift, it's a question. What will you choose? Peace or war, corn or blood? You hide the basket in your dress, return to the hut, and don't tell Samuel. Because in Plymouth, living isn't about claiming land. It's about learning to tread lightly on another's earth, trembling, unsure of the answer. Your boots, Eliza, Sink deep into the mud as you trudge out of the Plymouth hut, the sky still pitch black, lit only by the faint glow of the fire inside. 10 months have passed since you arrived, and each day is a merciless cycle, like a plow grinding through rocky soil. You breathe the biting air, chest aching, and begin the day, not from hope, but because to stop is to die. The fire in the hearth has died to cold ash. You kneel, hands trembling, blowing gently on embers, praying for a spark. A small flame flickers, and you feed it dry twigs, listening to them crackle. Abigail's child, now curled asleep in a blanket, mumbles in her dreams. You don't wake her. Dreams are her only freedom. You boil water, mixing a dwindling handful of cornmeal, less than yesterday, into thin gruel. It smells bland, but it's the only thing keeping the group alive. Gray light seeps through gaps in the roof. You carry a bucket to the stream, half a mile away, mud clinging to your boots, each step heavy as dragging stone. The stream's water is icy, numbing your hands. You fill the bucket, water sloshing, soaking your dress. On the way back, you see John, the blacksmith, felling a tree nearby. He nods, silent, but his gaze is warmer than the morning's chill. You think of the iron cross he gave you, hidden in your dress, and feel a spark of strength. Samuel appears, his voice booming. "Plow the field by noon." You nod, avoiding his eyes. Here, the wrong glance can be a sin. You grab a shovel, start digging, the rocky soil scraping your hands. Each thrust is a silent curse, but you don't stop. The child wakes, bringing a small bundle of kindling, and you tell her to steer clear of Samuel. She nods, eyes wide, having learned silence from you. The sun rises, but brings no warmth. You pause digging, shoulders throbbing, to share the gruel. The pot yields only a few spoonfuls each. Samuel eats first, taking a larger share. John gives his portion to the child, and you want to thank him, but the words stick in your throat. You chew the ashy gruel, trying not to recall the scent of real bread in England. The child watches you, not asking for more, and your heart cracks. After eating, you return to work. You weed the garden where frail corn sprouts grow, thanks to the Wampanoag's planting method. Sea wind blows, cold and salty, stinging your eyes. A crow perches on a fence, black eyes glinting, as if counting your days. Samuel passes, barking at you to work faster. You nod, but your mind drifts to the Wampanoag's grass basket, hidden beneath your dress. You've told no one. Secrets are the only power you hold. Your hands blister, blood seeping as you drag a log to build a chicken coop. The settlement's lone hen, skeletal, is a faint hope for eggs. You tie twine, nails breaking, and frame the coop. John joins, silent, handing you a plank. You work together, wordless, his presence a shield against the cold. Once, your hand brushes his, and you pull back quick, heart racing, fearing Samuel's gaze. Rain begins, fine but relentless. You press on, dress drenched, mud caking your skirt. The child brings a rag to wipe tools, trying to help, and you smile, a rare smile, like sunlight through clouds. You teach her to fetch water, though her small hands are weak. She fumbles, but you don't scold. Here, children learn through mistakes, and mistakes are the only thing free. The rain stops, but darkness falls fast. You return to the hut, reheat the gruel, now just water with a few corn grains. Samuel reads scripture, voice low, and you listen, though your mind wanders, to the Wampanoag, the grass basket, the question you haven't answered. John eats little, saving some for the child. You want to speak, but Ezekiel, the preacher, arrives, urging prayer. You bow your head, murmuring, though prayers lost meaning long ago. The child coughs, a small, sharp sound. You clench your fists, remembering Abigail, and brew pine needle tea, knowing it's useless. You give it to her, holding her close, feeling her faint breath. John watches, his gaze heavy, as if wanting to say something, but he turns away. Samuel orders the fire doused early to save wood. You obey, though darkness makes the hut colder. You lie on the dirt floor, the child asleep beside you, her breathing wheezy. Wind howls through gaps, a deathly lullaby. You clutch the iron cross, its edges sharp, and think of today. Mud, gruel, shovel, rain. Tomorrow will be the same, but you're not afraid. Not because you're strong, but because you're used to it. You close your eyes, hearing the child's cough, wondering if she'll survive winter. But in the darkness, you feel a flicker. Not hope, but will. You'll wake, kindle the fire, fetch water, and carry on. Because in Plymouth, a day lived isn't victory. It's defiance, written in sweat and blood that you haven't yet fallen. Silence cloaks the Plymouth hut, broken only by the child's dry cough beside you, Eliza, as you sit by the extinguished hearth, clutching a tattered blanket scrap. 11 months have passed since you arrived, and death is no longer a specter. It's a companion, walking with you through each day, leaving shallow graves and voids that can't be filled. You look at the child, frail, her breath faint, and wonder if she'll survive the winter or join those gone, like Abigail, like Mary, like countless faces now mere memories. Death comes gently, sometimes. You remember Abigail, who shared berries with you, curled in the hut's corner, her eyes fading like a candle in the wind. You held her hand, heard her whisper of her child, and then she stopped breathing. You wrapped her in a blanket, dug her grave in the rain, mud clinging to your hands as if to keep her. There were no tears. You had no strength to cry. You stood, hearing the shovels scrape, and carried on, stirring the pot, mending clothes, as if death were just another task. Sometimes death comes violently. Thomas, who laughed while helping you build a fence, ate strange mushrooms and convulsed, eyes rolling white. You stood back, terrified, hearing his moans until silence fell. Samuel ordered a quick burial, no rites, no prayers. You shoveled dirt, nails breaking, wondering if you'd be next. Each grave is a reminder. In Plymouth, life is fleeting, and death is the only certainty. You recall Mary, who gave birth in agony, blood soaking the straw. You held her hand, playing midwife, though you knew nothing. The baby lived, but Mary didn't. You dug her grave under faint sunlight, the earth cold beneath your hands. The child now cries nightly with another caretaker, as if knowing where its mother went. You avoid looking at it too long. Looking means remembering, and remembering is a burden. Death doesn't discriminate. It takes children, like Abigail's, who stopped breathing in winter. You held her, cold and still, and dug a shallow pit, frozen earth resisting the shovel. No one spoke. Samuel read a dry scripture verse, and you piled stones over the grave as if to lock death away. It takes the strong, like Caleb, tied for begging more gruel, and vanished in the night. You found his shoes by the stream and asked no questions. It takes the weak, like Ruth, who stood in the square with a liar sign, then collapsed from fever. You didn't dig her grave. Someone did. You just kept stirring the pot. Now you sit, hearing the child's cough, feeling death hover like smoke from the dead fire. You brew pine needle tea, knowing it's futile, and give it to her, hands shaking. John, the blacksmith, enters, carrying a log. He says nothing, sets it down, and looks at the child. His gaze is heavy, as if he hears death too. You want to speak, but words stick. Here, words save no one. You recall early days when death shocked you. A man hanged for stealing corn, and you stood in the crowd, stomach churning. You saw the rope tighten, heard the wind, and thought, how did it come to this? Now, you don't ask. Death is part of Plymouth, like mud, hunger, Samuel's laws. You've learned not to look too long, not to think too much. You dig graves, cover them, and carry on. But each leaves a scar inside, unseen but aching nightly. The child coughs harder, and you clench your fist, feeling the iron cross John gave you, its edges sharp against your skin. You think of the Wampanoag, their grass basket, and wonder if they know a cure for this cough. But you don't dare ask Samuel. He'd call it devilry. You hold the child, singing a hoarse lullaby, though she doesn't hear. You think of Abigail's words. Watch over her. You've tried, but is trying enough? Death has changed you. You're no longer Eliza, who dreamed of a warm home. You're Eliza, the grave digger, the pot stirrer, the one holding a child, though she may slip away. You don't fear death anymore. You fear what it leaves: emptiness, silence, faces you can't forget. You look at John, kindling the fire, and wonder if he sees the same ghosts. He doesn't speak, but his eyes tell you he does. As moonlight slips through a roof gap, you lay the child down, tucking her in, and sit by the newly lit fire. The flame is small, but stubborn, like you. You clutch the cross, thinking of graves, of Abigail, of Mary, and realize death isn't the enemy. It's a teacher, showing you that living is refusing to stop, though the earth is cold though your heart breaks. You rise, boil water, and prepare for tomorrow. Because in Plymouth, death isn't the end. It's a reminder. You're still here, still fighting, if only for one more day, if only to give this child one more breath. You, Eliza, drive a small branch into the earth beside the Plymouth hut, hands caked with mud, marking the 365th day you've survived here. A year has passed since you stepped off the Hope's anchor, and this world of mud, hunger, and death has honed you into someone new, sharper, yet more fractured. You eye the branch, frail but upright, and wonder, are you living or merely existing like this rootless, futureless stick? Your gaze sweeps the settlement. Crooked huts, broken fences, stunted cornfields. Abigail's child, now slightly taller, gathers stones, her wide eyes no longer asking about spring. John, the blacksmith, hammers at his forge, black smoke rising like unheard prayers. Samuel, silver-bearded, stands on the hill, watching like a cold god. You see it all, but pain no longer stings. It's become your flesh, like the calluses on your hands. The child's sharp, small cough pulls you back. You listen, ears straining, counting each breath, fearing it may falter. Sea wind wails through the forest, carrying salt and soil, a wordless song of harshness. From afar, John's hammer rings steady, the settlement's heartbeat. Samuel reads scripture, voice low, but you no longer heed his words. You hear your own, whispering inside. Why live, if only to dig more graves? You recall Abigail's laugh, now gone. Mary's moans in childbirth, the scrape of your shovel burying them. Those sounds cling to you, thorns in your heart. But you hear new sounds too, the rustle of leaves when the Wampanoag left corn, their soft footsteps in the woods. They don't speak, but their silence teaches. This land doesn't need you, but you need it. You listen and begin to understand. Your hand brushes the iron cross John gave you, its edges sharp against your skin, reminding you that you still feel. You touch the child's matted, soft hair, feeling her warmth. You touch the cold, damp earth, planting corn, recalling the Wampanoag's method. Each touch ties you to this world, though it tries to topple you. You remember mud under your nails, the axe's jolt in your hands, blood seeping when a sewing needle pricks. Those sensations no longer make you flinch. They are you, Eliza, no longer the dreaming girl from the ship, but a woman with scarred hands and a hardened heart. Yet, touching the wilted wildflower the child gave you, tucked in your pocket, you feel a crack, not pain, but yearning for more than survival. The fire's smoke clings to your dress, mingling with wet earth and bland cornmeal gruel. You smell death, not in the wind, but in the child's wheezing breath, in the useless pine tea you brew nightly. Plymouth's scent is want. No bread, no flowers, only mud and sweat. But sometimes you catch the forest's aroma, oak leaves, pine sap, and think of the Wampanoag, who know this land like their own skin. You smell faint hope when corn sprouts emerge, their fresh earth scent pausing you to breathe deeply and think, maybe tomorrow will differ. You smell John, coal and iron, when he stands near, and wonder if he smells you, not mud, but the woman who hasn't fallen. Sitting by the fire as night falls, you ask, why are you here? Not for God, as Samuel claims, not for land, as Ezekiel preaches, perhaps for the child, for John, for those dead you won't forget, perhaps to prove this cruel land won't win. You think of the Wampanoag, their grass basket, and realize, living isn't claiming land, but learning to belong to it, even slightly. You no longer dream of England's homes. Home is this hut, this child, these corn sprouts. You don't pray for miracles, but for strength, to stir the pot, dig earth, hold the child when she coughs. Clutching the cross, you feel for the first time you're not just surviving, you're searching, not for gold or freedom, but meaning small as the branch you planted today. As moonlight spills through a roof gap, you rise, tuck the child's blanket, and glance at John, sharpening an axe by the forge. He looks up, eyes meeting yours, and without words, you know, you're both seeking the same thing. You return to the fire, stoke the coals, and let the small flame burn bright. Because in Plymouth, living isn't stretching out days. It's kindling a fire, however small, in the dark, and believing it's worth it, whether tomorrow comes or not. An arrow embeds deep in the wooden fence by your hut, Eliza, its feather quivering in the sea breeze, a sharp whisper from Plymouth's forest. 13 months have passed since you arrived, and the fragile bond with the Wampanoag, once marked by gifts of corn and feathers, now frays as Samuel pushes fences further into their land. You stand, heart pounding, staring at the arrow, knowing this isn't just a warning, but a boundary crossed. At dawn, you find the arrow while fetching water from the stream. No one's near, but the forest holds an eerie silence, as if holding its breath. You pull the arrow free, wood splintering, and hide it under your dress, not daring to show Samuel. He'd call it war, order a counterattack, and you know blood would spill. You return to the hut, hands trembling, and see Abigail's child weeding. "Stay out of the forest," you whisper, voice taut. She nods, unquestioning, accustomed to fear. In your heart, you think of the Wampanoag's grass basket, their lesson in planting corn. You want to believe peace is still possible, but Samuel disagrees. He stands on the hill, pointing at the forest, ordering more trees felled, fields expanded. "This land is ours," he thunders. You want to scream that it has owners, but you stay silent. A woman's words hold no weight here. Word of the arrow spreads, though you said nothing. Someone saw you remove it, and by nightfall, the settlement buzzes. Ezekiel, the preacher, calls it the devil's sign. Samuel gathers everyone, ordering muskets brought, though few know how to shoot. John, the blacksmith, stands beside you, whispering, "They're not attacking. They just want us to stop." You nod, clutching the iron cross he gave you, but don't speak. Samuel's watching. You lie awake, holding the child, hearing her cough, thinking of the Wampanoag. You recall the woman by the stream, showing you how to plant corn, her gaze patient yet wary. They're not enemies, but Samuel doesn't see it. He wants land, power, proof God's on his side. You wonder, if war comes, whose side will you take? The question terrifies you, because you know the answer could kill you. Samuel orders more fences built, deeper into the forest. You swing an axe, felling trees, each strike a pulse of dread. John works beside you, silent, but his eyes say it all. This is a mistake. The child carries kindling, small among adults, and you keep her close. As the fence rises, you spot footprints in the mud. Not yours, not John's. The Wampanoag are watching. That afternoon, a Wampanoag man appears at the forest's edge, unarmed, in deerskin, his gaze sharp. Samuel raises his musket, but you step forward, hands up. "Don't shoot," you say, voice trembling but firm. The man looks at you, points to the fence, and shakes his head. He speaks, voice low, but you don't understand. He turns, vanishing into the trees. Samuel berates you for interfering, but you don't regret it. You stopped a shot, but only for today. Before the crowd, Samuel brands you traitor, his voice seething. Ezekiel reads scripture, demanding repentance. You bow your head, but don't apologize. Whispers cut like knives, but John stands close, his shoulder brushing yours, a silent vow. The child grips your hand, small but fierce, and you draw strength from her. You know, you're not wrong, whatever the cost. That night, you dream of the forest, the Wampanoag, blood. You wake, heart racing, finding the child asleep, her breath faint. You brew pine tea, though useless, and think of the arrow. You retrieve it, studying its feather, realizing the Wampanoag don't want war, but they won't yield their land. Samuel craves battle, but you crave peace, not from weakness, but because you've seen too much death. As faint sunlight seeps through a gap, you stand outside, gazing at the forest. A bird soars past, its cry sharp, like a warning. You clutch the iron cross, thinking of John, the child, the Wampanoag. You don't know if war will come, but you know you'll fight. Not with guns, but by holding on to what remains, by refusing to let Samuel make you an enemy of this land. You return to the hut, embrace the child, and prepare gruel. Because in Plymouth, living isn't victory. It's clinging to a sliver of peace, however small, on the edge of blood and earth. The air in Plymouth settlement hangs heavy like storm clouds. Eliza, as you stand in the hut, feeling unease spread like toxic smoke, seeping through every glance, every whisper. 14 months have passed since you arrived, and now the endurance of the survivors, worn thin by hunger, sickness, and Samuel's iron laws, is cracking, leading to a breaking point where you must choose between silence and speaking out. This is the story of the day the settlement teetered on the brink, and how you, a powerless woman, became the storm's center. I recall that morning, before dawn, when you kindled the fire, hands trembling in the March chill. Abigail's child, weaker from a persistent cough, slept by the hearth, her breath wheezing. You boiled cornmeal gruel, scarcer than ever, and heard heavy footsteps. Not Samuel, but John, the blacksmith, his eyes ablaze. "They can't take it anymore," he whispered, voice low. "Samuel takes too much." You knew "they" meant the others, people like Hannah, who lost her child to fever, like William, punished with less food for working slowly. You nodded, but your heart clenched. Defiance meant death. I see Hannah, a month ago, standing by her child's grave, clutching muddy earth, eyes vacant. She once sang lullabies, but now only muttered curses against Samuel, who hoarded corn while her child starved. You brought her gruel, but she refused, saying, "Death is easier." Her words stuck, thorns in your heart. You knew Hannah wasn't just grieving. She was angry, and anger is a dangerous flame in Plymouth. The spark ignited at noon when Samuel summoned everyone to divide the corn. The stores were nearly gone, yet he kept a full sack for himself, saying, "God provides for the leader." William, thin as kindling, stepped forward, voice shaking. "God didn't give us starvation." The crowd fell silent, but you felt it. The tension, a bowstring pulled taut. Samuel raised a hand, ordering William bound, but John stepped up, hammer in hand. "Enough," he said, voice like iron. You stood, holding the child, heart pounding. I see John, last night, forging a blade, not for hunting, but defense. He told you of his father, who died defying authority in England, and said, "I won't die like that." You clutched the iron cross he gave you, feeling its weight, and knew John wasn't just protecting himself. He was shielding you, the child, those too broken to endure. A small rebellion erupted fast. Hannah threw a stone, striking Samuel's shoulder. Others shouted, not from anger, but desperation. Ezekiel, the preacher, screamed of sin, but no one listened. You wanted to flee, but the child gripped your hand, and you stayed. John faced Samuel, not striking, only saying, "Share the corn, or we die together." For the first time, Samuel stepped back, his gaze wavering. You moved forward, voice soft but clear. "They're hungry. We're hungry." The crowd hushed, staring at you. A woman, daring to speak. I see Samuel, last week, praying alone, hands trembling. He's not evil, but afraid. Of losing control, of God, of the Wampanoag. He hoarded corn to maintain order. You once saw him look at Abigail's child, his eyes softening, but he turned away as if compassion were sin. You know, Samuel's no God, just a man, but a man with a whip is more dangerous. The resolution came swiftly. Under pressure, Samuel divided the sack, each person getting a small handful. No one cheered. They took the corn, eyes empty, and returned to their huts. William wasn't bound, but Samuel's glare marked him for death. John lowered his hammer, shoulders slumped, but his eyes shone. You held the child, feeling her breath, knowing you'd won a small battle, but the cost would come. Ezekiel whispered to Samuel, eyes sharp, and you knew they wouldn't forgive. That night, you sat by the fire, brewing pine tea for the child. John came, offering a cornmeal scrap. "You were brave," he said, voice low. You shook your head, but he took your hand, briefly, warmly. You thought of the Wampanoag, the arrow, this land. You knew. Today's rebellion wasn't just about corn. It was about refusing to be crushed, about finding a way to live, not just exist. You looked at the child, sleeping soundly, and realized you weren't fighting for yourself alone. You fought for her, for John, for those who died. As moonlight slipped through a roof gap, you clutched the iron cross, its edges sharp, and stood. You boiled water, prepared gruel for tomorrow, though you knew Samuel would retaliate. You weren't afraid. Not because you're strong, but because you'd seen, even in darkness, a small light, a handful of corn, a spoken word, a hand, can change everything. Because in Plymouth, living isn't bowing. It's daring to stand, even once, though the ground beneath you quakes. Snow falls thick on Plymouth's stunted cornfield. Eliza, like fragments of a shattered sky, burying every trace of hope you once sowed. 15 months have passed since you arrived, and this second winter, fiercer than the first, strangles the settlement with cold, hunger, and the looming shadow of conflict with the Wampanoag. I write these words, an unsent letter, not for anyone, but for myself, to remember I'm still Eliza, still alive, though this land tries to bury me. I want to tell you about the cold. It's not just skin deep. It seeps into bones, into dreams, stiffening my fingers as I kindle the fire. My hut, with gaps wide as curses, holds no warmth. I huddle by the hearth, counting each stick, knowing they'll run out before the snow stops. Abigail's child, now so thin I see her bones through her shirt, coughs nightly. I brew pine tea, though it's useless, and hold her, hoping my warmth keeps her alive. But the cold spares no one. It steals strength, sanity, and I fear waking to find her cold beside me. I want to tell you about hunger. The gruel pot holds only water now, with a few grains floating like memories. After the rebellion, Samuel shared corn, but the stores are gone. We eat bark, boil roots, chew dry grass. Once, John shot a crow, and we shared its meat, gnawing bones. I look at the child, her eyes sunken, and give her my share. My stomach screams, but I don't regret it. Samuel keeps the last corn, claiming it's for next season's planting, but I've seen him eat in secret. I want to shout, but I stay silent. Anger doesn't feed anyone. I want to tell you about the Wampanoag. Their arrow still haunts me, but they haven't attacked. I find footprints in the snow near the new fence, and once, a handful of corn left by the stream. Not a gift, but a reminder. They're here, watching. Samuel calls them a threat, but I think otherwise. They know this land, how to survive, and I want to learn. One night, I dreamed of the Wampanoag woman by the stream, teaching me to plant corn. Waking, I wept, not from sorrow, but because I know peace is possible if Samuel stops claiming the earth. I want to tell you about John. He's a small flame in this winter. He forges knives, repairs fences, brings me firewood when Samuel isn't looking. Once, he held my hand, briefly, and said, "We'll get through." I want to believe him, but his eyes are heavy, as if he hears death too. I clutch the iron cross he gave me, its edges sharp, and wonder, will we ever live, not just survive? I don't dare answer. Dreaming is dangerous in Plymouth. I want to tell you about Samuel. He's no longer a god. The rebellion shook him, and now he rules by fear. He punished Hannah, forcing her to stand in the snow for throwing a stone. She collapsed, and I carried her to my hut, defying Ezekiel's glare. Samuel watches me, as if I'm next, but I don't bow. I no longer fear him. I fear death, but not him. He's just a man, and men can be wrong. I want to tell you about the child. She's why I wake. Her cough pierces my heart, but her smile, rare, like winter sunlight, keeps me alive. I teach her to gather stones, tie knots, avoid Samuel. She calls me Mama, and I don't correct her. I'm not her mother, but I'm all she has. I hide a cornmeal scrap for her, though Samuel would punish me if he knew. I don't care. She must live, even if I don't. I want to tell you about winter. It's not just snow. It's darkness, silence, the sense that this land wants to swallow us. But I don't yield. I kindle the fire, though wood is scarce. I stir the pot, though it's only water. I hold the child, though my hands are cold. I think of the Wampanoag, of corn, of peace. I think of John, his gaze. And I write these words, a vow. I won't fall, not today. As moonlight spills through a gap, I fold this imagined letter, tucking it into my heart, and rise. I blanket the child, stoke the coals, and look at the snow. An owl hoots, its call echoing like a promise. I grip the iron cross, drawing strength from it, from John, from myself. Winter may kill me, but it won't take my will. Because in Plymouth, living isn't waiting for snow to melt. It's writing your story, even in your mind, and believing one day someone will read it, though you've turned to snow. A deerskin pouch, tied tight with hemp cord, lies silently by the stream near Plymouth's settlement. Eliza, like a secret the forest wants you to find. 16 months have passed since you arrived, and in the deadly chill of the second winter, as hunger and death grip the settlement, this pouch, a gift from the Wampanoag, ushers in a singular day where you uncover not just food, but a spark of hope, shaking what you once believed about land and people. This is the journey of that day, when you stood on the edge of life and death, fear and gratitude. You spot the pouch while fetching water, snow knee-deep, your breath turning to mist. Your heart clenches. Last month's arrow still haunts you, and you fear a trap. You glance around. The forest is silent, only snow falling softly. Abigail's child, at your side, grips your hand, eyes wide. "Mama, what's that?" she asks, voice small. You don't answer, kneeling, hands trembling, to open the pouch. Inside lies corn, dried fish, and a handful of squash seeds, more than the settlement has seen in a month. You clutch the pouch, heart racing, fearing Samuel will deem it devilry and order it burned. You hide the pouch under your dress, hurrying the child back to the hut, telling no one, not even John. Samuel patrols, musket on shoulder, eyes sharp as knives. You think of the rebellion, how he called you traitor. If he learns of this pouch, he'll destroy it, or worse, order an attack on the Wampanoag. You kindle the fire, boil water, and act normal, but inside, a question echoes. Why do they help you after everything? In the hut, with Samuel gone, you open the pouch, spilling corn onto the floor. The child squeals, her rare laugh like sunlight. John enters, sees the corn, and freezes, eyes alight. "Where from?" he asks, voice low. You tell of the pouch, the stream, and he nods, saying nothing more. You divide the corn, a small share for the hut, the rest hidden beneath the floor. John brings the fish, roasting it over the fire, its aroma making your mouth water. You eat, feeling full for the first time in weeks, not just your stomach, but your heart. You think of the Wampanoag, the woman by the stream, the corn they left before. They're not your people, yet they know hunger, know death. Ezekiel called them heathens, but this act, a pouch of food in winter, is holier than any sermon. You watch the child chew fish and wonder, can you repay them or only bring more conflict? Snow stops, a gray light blanketing the settlement. You go to the field, where corn sprouts you planted Wampanoag style lie buried under snow. You kneel, touching cold earth, and think, this land isn't Samuel's, isn't yours. It's theirs, and they share, though you're strangers. You recall the grass basket, the arrow, and realize they don't want war, but respect. You failed before, but today you want to try again. John finds you, holding a newly forged knife. "For you," he says, handing it over. You take it, feeling its weight, and say, "We must repay them." He nods, eyes steady yet grave. You know, peace is risky, but war is death. You think of the child, her smile today, and decide, you'll find a way, despite Samuel. Under cover of dark, you and John sneak to the stream, carrying a small sack, bits of iron John forged, a blanket scrap you sewed, placing it beside the deerskin pouch. It's no grand gift, but it's all you have. You stand, snow falling lightly, and whisper, "Thank you." No one answers, but you feel the forest listen. You return, hold the child, and tell her of the Wampanoag, of corn, of kindness. She sleeps, her breathing less labored, and you feel relief. Samuel doesn't know, but you know the cost. If he finds out, you'll be punished. But you're not afraid. You've seen death, dug graves, starved. A pouch of corn won't save the settlement, but it saves you, not from death, but from hardening. You clutch the iron cross, glance at John by the forge, and know you're not alone. As moonlight seeps through a gap, you kindle the fire, cooking gruel from the Wampanoag's gift. Its aroma spreads, a promise. You think of this land, the Wampanoag, the child. Winter remains brutal, but today you see light, not from the sun, but from kindness, from connection. Because in Plymouth, living isn't fighting the land. It's learning to share it, even just a handful of corn, even for one day, though snow still falls. A dry, rasping cough echoes from the corner of the Plymouth hut. Eliza, like a blade tearing the still air, heralding the return of sickness, fiercer than ever. 17 months have passed since you arrived, and now, as the second winter roars, a mysterious fever threatens to sweep the settlement, forcing you into agonizing choices between sacrifice and survival. I tell this story backward, from the moment you face death's shadow, retreating through the days leading to the crisis, to understand why you, a powerless woman, stand at the edge of life. You kneel beside Abigail's child, burning with fever, skin flushed, eyes glazed. Her cough is an axe, cleaving your heart. You brew pine tea, hands trembling, knowing it's futile. John, the blacksmith, stands at the door, eyes heavy. "She's not the only one," he whispers. You glance around. Hannah lies curled, coughing blood. William, who defied Samuel, now still, breath faint. A third of the settlement is sick, and you know, this isn't just fever, it's judgment. You think of the Wampanoag's corn pouch, now gone. It saved you through hungry days, but not against disease. Samuel, wild-eyed, prays by the fire, but his words save no one. You want to flee, but the child grips your hand, whispering, "Mama, don't go." You stay, though you fear infection, though each breath is a gamble. You wipe her brow, sing a hoarse lullaby, and wonder, can you save her, or will you bury her like Abigail, like Mary? Days before, the sickness spread. Hannah was first, coughing dryly while sharing gruel. You urged her to rest, but Samuel barked, "Laziness is sin." She worked on, collapsing by nightfall. You carried her to the hut, defying Ezekiel, who called the illness God's curse. You boiled sage, recalling Wampanoag herbal ways, but Hannah weakened. John brought firewood, helped boil water, and said, "We need them." You knew he meant the Wampanoag, but Samuel wouldn't listen. He feared them more than disease. You recall the day you left a sack of iron by the stream, repaying the Wampanoag. They didn't return, but you saw footprints in the snow. You wanted to seek them, beg for medicine, but Samuel patrolled, musket ready. You hid your plan, held the child, and prayed. But God didn't answer. Only coughs answered, growing louder, a chorus of death. Weeks earlier, the fever hadn't struck, but signs loomed. William complained of headaches. Hannah shivered while washing rags. You realized cold, hunger, and damp huts bred disease. You suggested boiling clean water, sharing corn fairly, but Samuel dismissed you, saying, "God will protect." You wanted to scream that God wasn't here, but you stayed silent. You remembered Abigail, dead from fever, and feared the child would be next. You and John secretly shared the last corn, hidden beneath the floor. You gave Hannah a share, hoping she'd strengthen, but she refused, eyes vacant. "Nothing left to live for," she said. Her words clung like snow to boots. You thought of the Wampanoag, surviving winter. You wanted to learn, but every step into the forest risked not just disease, but Samuel's wrath. Months back, winter tightened, yet the settlement endured, thanks to Wampanoag corn. You planted squash seeds, though snow buried them, and felt hope. The child laughed, first in months, as you spoke of the Wampanoag. John brought firewood, his eyes brighter, as if he saw light too. You thought, maybe we'll make it. But then William coughed, sharp and small, and you felt a chill, not from snow, but foreboding. Samuel ordered more fences built, though sickness lurked. You felled trees, hands blistered, and saw Wampanoag footprints by the stream. No corn, no feathers, just tracks. You wanted to leave something, but had nothing to give. You returned, held the child, and realized hope wasn't enough. Disease was coming, and you weren't ready. Now, you sit by the child, her fever rising, breath faint. John brings water, his hands shaking. "I'll go," he says, voice resolute. You know he means to find the Wampanoag, seek medicine, though Samuel would kill him if he knew. You grasp his hand, whispering, "Be careful." He nods, his eyes a promise. You hold the child, singing, thinking of Abigail, of sacrifice. You know, if John doesn't return, you'll go, even if it means death, for the child, for Hannah, for yourself. As moonlight seeps through a gap, you clutch the iron cross, its edges sharp, and rise. You boil water, wipe the child's brow, and wait for John. Disease may win, but you won't surrender. You think of the Wampanoag, their corn, their kindness. A small spark burns in you, not hope, but resolve. Because in Plymouth, living isn't evading death. It's fighting for those you love, for one more breath, one more night, though sickness knocks. John staggered through the thick snow, his figure a hazy shadow under the moonlight, clutching a small leather pouch as you, Eliza, stood before the Plymouth cabin, your heart pounding like a war drum. 18 months had passed since you arrived here, and now, amidst the fever ravaging the settlement, John's return with medicine from the Wampanoag brought hope, but also ignited Samuel's fury, thrusting everyone onto the edge of survival and conflict. I tell this story through your lens, where every action weaves with churning thoughts, like a storm within. Action. John collapsed before the cabin, snow clinging to his coat, his breath ragged. You rushed to him, supporting his weight, feeling the chill of his skin. "Medicine," he gasped, handing you the leather pouch. You opened it, revealing dried leaves, roots, and a piece of charcoal. Wampanoag herbs. Abigail's child, burning with fever, lay curled by the hearth. Without hesitation, you boiled water, ground the leaves, your heart racing. Would it save her? Or was it a trap, as Samuel would claim? You pushed the thought aside, mixed the remedy, and fed it to the child. She coughed, but swallowed, and you prayed, not to God, but to the earth. Thoughts. John risked his life to bring this back. He ventured into the forest, defying Samuel, defying the snow. Why did he do it? For the child? For me? You glanced at him, wiping snow from his face, his eyes steady yet bright. You recalled the iron cross he gave you, still tucked in your cloak, sharp like a reminder. He trusts you, and you trust him. But Samuel won't forgive. He calls the Wampanoag devils, calls you a traitor. If he finds out, we're dead. But if I don't use the medicine, the child will die. You chose the child. Action. Hannah, struck by fever, stirred and drank the remedy you offered. She was weak, but her eyes shone brighter. William, once defiant, lay still, but his breathing eased. You distributed the medicine secretly, only to those you trusted. John stood guard, knife in hand, ready if Samuel came. Snow fell heavily, hiding his tracks, but you knew. Secrets don't last in Plymouth. Ezekiel, the preacher, patrolled, his eyes sharp as an owl's. You hid the pouch under the floorboards, your pulse quickening. Just get through tonight. Just let the child live. Thoughts. The Wampanoag saved us, despite Samuel's thirst for war. Why did they help? For the corn we planted? For the iron we left behind? You recalled the woman by the stream, her patient gaze, and realized they don't want blood, only respect for the land. You wanted to learn from them, but Samuel would never allow it. If I survive, I'll find them, if only to say thank you. But survival is a luxury, and you feared. If the medicine fails, if Samuel discovers it, everything will crumble. Action. Dawn broke, and Samuel appeared, musket on his shoulder. "Who brought this?" he roared, holding a leaf you forgot to hide. The crowd fell silent, their eyes avoiding you. John stepped forward, declaring, "I did." You wanted to scream it was you, but he shook his head, his eyes signaling, "Don't." Samuel bound John, ordering him locked in a freezing cabin. You cradled the child, her fever now broken, her breathing steady, and felt your heart shatter. John sacrificed himself for me, for the child. Ezekiel recited scriptures, calling the medicine witchcraft. But you didn't listen. You only saw John, dragged away, shoulders bent but unbroken. Thoughts. I was wrong to let John go. I should have gone, should have taken the punishment. You thought of Abigail, who entrusted her child to you, and felt guilt. You weren't strong enough to save everyone. But the child lives, Hannah lives, and you knew. The Wampanoag medicine was a miracle, not devilry. Samuel is wrong, but he'll never admit it. You thought of rebellion, of daring to speak, and realized you can't stay silent anymore. If John dies, I'll never forgive myself. But if I don't act, I don't deserve to live. Action. Night fell, and you slipped to the cabin holding John, snow sinking deep, biting your feet. You cut his ropes, hands trembling, and pulled him free. "Run," you whispered. He shook his head, saying, "I won't leave you." You pushed him, voice hoarse. "For the child." He nodded, eyes pained, and vanished into the forest. You returned, feigning innocence, but Samuel knew. He confronted you, his gaze like a blade. "You'll pay," he said. You stood tall, clutching the iron cross, and didn't bow. The child clung to you, her warmth your only strength. As moonlight slipped through the cracks, you sat by the hearth, holding the child, listening to the snow fall. John was gone. Perhaps alive, perhaps dead. Samuel would punish you, but you weren't afraid. The Wampanoag medicine saved the child, saved Hannah, and you knew. Kindness was stronger than muskets, stronger than laws. You thought of this land. The Wampanoag, John. A small fire burned within you. Not rebellion, but faith. For in Plymouth, living wasn't about escaping punishment. It was about choosing right, even if it cost everything, even if only to keep a child alive, even as snow buried all. The faint glow from the hearth's flickering flame, Eliza, illuminated the sleeping face of the child in the Plymouth cabin, like a promise that life persisted despite death's constant shadow. 18 months had passed since you set foot here, and today, as the consequences of freeing John thrust you into a final trial, an unexpected moment of reconciliation opened a new path for the settlement, leaving you with a silent question. Is survival enough, or have you found something greater? This is the story of that day, the final loop of your journey, from fragile light to enduring radiance, closing yet never truly ending. You sat by the hearth, cradling the child, her fever now broken, her breathing steadier thanks to the Wampanoag medicine. Snow still fell outside, but within the cabin, the warmth of the small fire was all you had. You clutched the iron cross John gave you, its sharp edge grazing your skin, and thought of him. Alive, or swallowed by the snow? Samuel, with his dagger-like glare, had branded you a sinner, but held back. You waited, heart heavy, knowing judgment would come. Hannah, saved by the medicine, brought water, her eyes grateful yet anxious. "They say Samuel will punish you," she whispered. You nodded, silent, for words were now a luxury. The child stirred, offering a faint smile, calling you mother. You held her tighter, feeling a crack in your heart, not pain, but resolve. Whatever Samuel does, I saved her. That's enough. Yet deep down, you knew it wasn't enough, not when the settlement remained divided, not when the Wampanoag were still demons in Samuel's eyes. Samuel summoned everyone, snow blanketing the square. He stood, musket in hand, Ezekiel at his side, his voice like thunder. "Eliza betrayed us, freeing a criminal." The crowd murmured, their eyes wavering between fear and anger. You stood tall, holding the child, unbowed. "They can punish me, but they can't erase the truth. The medicine saved lives." Hannah stepped forward, voice trembling. "She saved me." William, frail but alive, nodded. The crowd stirred, and you saw. Samuel was no longer a god. Ezekiel ranted about devils, but another voice rose, not John's, but a Wampanoag man's, standing at the square's edge, his deer-hide cloak dusted with snow. Unarmed, he raised his hands, speaking in a tongue you didn't understand, but his eyes were clear. Peace. Samuel raised his musket, but you shouted, "Stop!" Your voice, for the first time, drowned his. The crowd fell silent, and the Wampanoag placed a leather sack on the ground, corn, dried fish, herbs. "For the sick," he said through a nearby settlement's interpreter. Samuel trembled, but lowered his weapon. Knowing Samuel would act, you secretly shared the remaining herbs, saving 2 more. The child grew stronger, and you told her of the Wampanoag, of kindness. She listened, eyes bright, and you realized you didn't just save her, you planted a seed, understanding. John, though fled, lived on in the cross, in your choices. You thought of Abigail's words, "Watch over her." You had, but at what cost? Hannah helped hide the herbs, whispering, "You've changed everything." You shook your head, but in your heart you knew. The rebellion, the medicine, the Wampanoag's kindness had cracked Samuel's wall. You prepared to face him, knowing you might not survive. You held the child, sang softly, and felt the ground beneath you steadier, despite the snow. After the square, Samuel stayed silent, sparing you punishment. The Wampanoag left, but their sack remained. You shared the corn and herbs, and for the first time, Samuel didn't hoard the bulk. He looked at you, his gaze no longer a blade but confusion. He saw it. We need them. The once divided crowd now worked together, brewing medicine, sharing food. Hannah smiled. William stood, and the child ran, weak but alive. You thought of John, the forest, and prayed for his safety. You thought of the Wampanoag, this land, and realized survival isn't enough. Living is sharing, respecting, standing up. You gripped the cross, feeling strength, not from iron, but from what you'd done, saving the child, defying Samuel, connecting with the Wampanoag. As moonlight slipped through the cracks, you sat by the hearth, holding the child, listening to her breathe. Snow fell, but it no longer frightened you. You reflected on this journey, from the ship Hope's anchor, through hunger, disease, death, to today, when you saw light. Not victory, but a beginning. You'd find John, learn from the Wampanoag, keep the child alive. Samuel might change or not, but you had changed. You stood, stoked the fire, and looked at the snow. A bird called, its cry echoing in the night, like a summons. You smiled, for the first time in 18 months, and knew you hadn't just survived. You'd found meaning in the child, the land, the kindness of strangers. For in Plymouth, living wasn't counting days. It was planting seeds, despite the snow, and trusting they'd grow, whether you saw them or not. Take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you've listened to this story in full. We're always thrilled to see people joining us from around the world.